Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. I'm super excited to be here with Marc. Hi, Marc. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So why don't you kind of take us back to the beginning, take us back to your early days, first drink, childhood, stuff like that.
Yeah, first that's a while ago because I just turned 40 last week, so I'd say I'd have to go back to probably when I was about 15 years old, I want to say. So I would have been sometime like sophomore in college or so, and I remember the first drink I ever had, and I got very sick on it, was a Zima, which is a nasty malt beverage type of drink. And I just remember the drinking a bunch of those and getting very sick and throwing up and saying, oh, I'll never do this again, and how could anybody drink this stuff? So that's my first, I guess, memory of actually drinking alcohol. Not a pleasant one, as probably most people would agree with on that. But I wouldn't say that I really started drinking much after that. I think it was a little bit later, a few years later, where I really started, I guess, getting more into it in college and so forth. But about 15 was probably when I first had my first experience with it.
And so you didn't like it, you did like it. How'd it go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't like the taste. I mean, I never grew accustomed to liking the taste of malt beverages anyway, but it was pretty gross. But I think, you like that feeling that you kind of got at the beginning, which is the part that kind of keeps bringing you back, right? As you start feeling good and your inhibitions are down and that sort of thing. And of course, it's cool to do it. So, why not? Like I said, I didn't get heavy into it in high school. I'd say we do the typical like Friday night football games. Let's go to a corner store that would, illegally sell underage kids alcohol. And we would buy, more of those kind of fruity type drinks, that sort of stuff that people are used to. And those tended to taste a little better, right? Because there are tons of sugar in them and Kool-Aid basically with a little alcohol. So,
Right.
Yeah, that first drink was, I didn't like it, I would say. It was just more the feeling. And then of course the hangover the next day was pretty rough being at that age.
And then so you didn't drink much in high school. Then what happened after high school? Where did it go from there?
Yeah. So, high school, again, I played sports and then I was working. So I didn't really, I guess, get too much into the heavy drinking crowd and keg parties and all those types of things that you typically hear about. I went to a 4-year university in Austin and, pretty typical party school, but I was still I was working full time and actually going to school full time. So it was a little bit different of a student. So I didn't have as much free time to go out and party and do those things until my junior and senior year, I would say, in college, which is obviously when I turned 21 as well. So then I had the ability to go out to bars and hang out. And I had some friends that, we would go out with pretty regularly, usually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights, Wednesday through Saturday nights, we would go out and, there's a very famous street in Austin, as most people who have been there know. And so you would have found me there quite a bit in the early 2000s and, just going out with some friends and having a good time. And of course, most of those nights ended with, pretty heavy drinking because you'd start early. And so I'd say that's probably where the bulk of that, the heavier drinking started was during those college years.
And did you feel pretty similar to your peers, or did you kind of feel like you were doing things differently at that time? Or
no, I'd say it felt normal, I guess I'd say, as we all were doing that, and there wasn't anything abnormal about it. Like, occasionally you'd get sick, of course, you'd have too much to drink, and so you'd be dealing with that the next morning. But at that age, you could rebound pretty quick, and you shove a hamburger in your mouth and a shake from somewhere, and you were back at it the next day. So the ability to bounce back was a lot different then. So I think we just sort of felt like that was just part of the cost of going out and having fun. I still made it to work every morning the next morning, or I made it to my classes. So it never impacted the ability to actually get up and do my job, probably because I was 21 and had that ability. Nowadays, that's not the case, right? You spend 3-4 days trying to recover from something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It totally catches up to you the older you are. So then what happened? You after sort of college, and where'd you go? What happened next?
Yep. Yeah. So after college, I graduated, and we made that, my girlfriend at the time, we got engaged, and we wanted to move back to Houston. So we moved back to Houston right after I graduated, and she had graduated, and I got into software technology sales. And so it was not something I went to school for. I went to school to be a management and business college and that sort of thing, but technology was just something that I liked. So I got into this tech sales role. And, in that world, if anybody out there is listening has been in it, that alcohol is a big part of it. Like, you always are at events, you're hosting happy hours for customers. There were keg parties on the top of the parking garage at this particular company that I worked for. That was kind of the norm. There was beer stocked in the fridges. I mean, it's just sort of how things were. Alcohol was just a heavy part of it. We'd go to sales kickoffs. I'm actually going to one next week in Vegas. So this will be a sober first for me in Vegas with zero alcohol. But I'm ready for the challenge. So it's just, there's just a lot of opportunities to drink. And so you felt like an outcast if you weren't. And literally I wrote this in my story, but it sticks out to me, is that somebody told me when I first joined, like, if you're in this role, you have to drink. Like, it's just almost a prerequisite for being in it, because you're going to be out entertaining customers, and, you don't want to be the guy not ordering a beer whenever your customer is doing it. So it just sort of was ingrained in our culture, I would say.
Yeah, that was obviously my same experience, literally being told, like, this is part of the whole thing. You got to do this.
Yep.
And
yeah.
so
can't put it on a job description, but it's part of it. Yeah.
Right. I know, it's so interesting. Wow. I heard a statistic recently that's blew me away, and I haven't seen the study myself, but it was from a reliable source, that basically they did a study in the UK, and the average employee costs their employer 7,500 pounds a year in hungover days.
Whoa. Wow.
Right?
I bet a lot of those were on this past Monday, at least in the US with the Super Bowl.
Right. All right, cool. So big sales job, keeping up. And then what's next?
Yeah. So I would say you didn't really notice. I didn't really notice, I guess, a big change in my drinking, because I was in college, and then I went to, software sales, like, oh, this is kind of the norm. Obviously, as I started, getting a little older, we weren't going out and partying all the time and doing those, but you certainly had the happy hours and everything. So I would say just gradually the amount of drinking went up. Usually it was just, hey, I'm only doing this on a, work function, or we're going out with friends. It wasn't a lot of drinking at the house. So I would say I wasn't stopping and picking up a 12-pack every day or anything like that in the earlier days. So, I kind of just said, hey, it's only when I'm out having fun, that's when we're doing it. So it's just it's social drinking, right? So you'd always mark that on your, your forms every time you go to the doctor. It's like, how much do you drink? Oh, I'm just a social drinker, because I'm only doing it when I'm out socially. I'm not sitting at my house on my couch by myself, drinking beer or vodka sodas or whatever. But I would say just over the course of the next probably eight years or so, it just gradually would increase. I think you said in the book is, you're always drinking more than you previously were, because to get that same feeling, you're having to take more in. And I was pretty proud of the, the endurance, I guess, or the, how much I could drink versus getting, drunk, right? The early days, it's like you have a few beers and you feel like you're very wasted. And then later on, it's like, well, I need six beers just to kind of get primed,
Right.
to be able to then, go start doing the real drinking. And that's just because your body gets used to it and takes a lot more. So I think gradually over time, just going and having, very heavy booze-filled weekends with, guys' trips, or just vacations that we would go on where it was very booze-centric and just a lot of, drinking. And it's almost felt like we were, planning our events and things around going out and making sure we had an opportunity to get drinks in and that sort of thing. So it started really, in the past few years, I would say, dominating a lot of the just decisions that you would make even when you're out and about, right? Instead of worrying about having fun and going to this next thing, it's like, okay, let's make sure we plan something so we have some opportunity to go and have an opportunity to drink, right? And so strategically placing things in there so that you always have a reason to say, oh, I'm only doing it because I'm on vacation, or, because so-and-so is in town, we're going to go have some drinks. Whatever the case may be, you make excuses to give yourself a reason to do it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, the tolerance thing, I remember being so proud of that for myself. Like, I was like, that is like, I'm
it's a badge
such
of honor.
badass, right? Like, it's just so interesting in hindsight. And, your body is just like, okay, I just need to learn how to process this better, because you're putting more and more of it into me, and I need to be able to like handle it without letting you die. Like, that's kind of what's happening here. And so we're like, okay,
I mean,
good.
I think they say you shouldn't drink like more than one drink, like, which is an ounce of liquor or maybe a 12-ounce beer once an hour, because your liver can't process it. But, you know, if I did that at that time, if I would only drink one beer an hour, I would have never even had a buzz. So it'd have been like, what's the point of really drinking, I guess, right? I mean, you're drinking to get that buzz feeling. And so one an hour just wasn't going to cut it for me, especially at like tailgates, you know, football events. Obviously, you know, alcohol is a big part of that. It's just, and it's funny now because I go to the games with my oldest son, and you know, he's kind of seen the change that I made, and you go to it's a lot cheaper, which is great, because you go sit at an NFL game and you could pay $12 for a beer, or you know, you get some water, and so it definitely makes the going out a lot cheaper. But it's just funny because there's advertisements everywhere for it, and I guess you don't notice it as much when you're in it, but now I see it everywhere. I mean, the signs, you know, billboards around Christmas time for you know, all kind of, you know, you can't have fun unless you have, you know, this type of vodka or whatever it is. I mean, it's out there in a big way, I would say, that I just didn't notice, I guess, until I kind of made that decision back in November.
Yeah, it's really hard to notice. And I feel like it's not only, there's two things sort of at play that are so interesting. I mean, you get really numb. You build up a tolerance for the advertising too. You know, you build up a tolerance for how much it's on everything, you know, just like specifically in football games, watching football games with the kids, it's like, wow, it's every other commercial. And the things that they're tying the alcohol into, you know, it's like self-actualization, or, you know, giving, or being a compassionate person, or helping your neighbor, or exercise. Like, it's not even like, maybe we've gotten smart to the whole, you know, you're going to go have, you know, a threesome if you drink this beer. Like, I didn't see any commercials like that. These were all these, you know, these like shed a tear, super deep emotional, oh, by the way, it's for a beer. I'm like, what?
Yep. No, my favorite is you know, the one particular beer that, you know, I liked because I, you know, bought into the advertising, is that if you're athletic and you like to go work out, you know, what do you do at the end of your workout? Well, you're going to go pick up one of these low carb beers and start, you know, hanging out with all your friends at the bar. I mean, that's kind of the advertising. And now there's a new one that's advertising themselves as the better version of that, better tasting, you know, a little bit lower carbs. So it's just funny that they have latched onto it, and it works. That's why they're doing it, is because they've got a lot of people hooked on it, and I was definitely one of them, and that was, you know, I was feeding into it. So
yeah, so true. So the other thing that's really, just to touch on before we move on, is that whole idea of how little or much you're drinking. I mean, I literally remember, and it was funny because I just remembered this recently. I had somebody come up to me, and we were just in a circle or whatever, and somebody was making a comment. One of our mom friends, we were all had dropped off the kids at like a school event, and the mom friends were standing in a circle, and they were just making this comment like, oh, Annie, it's so interesting. Like, now it's such a trend to like not drink. I'm seeing it everywhere, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, it's really interesting. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I barely ever drink anyway. And it was funny because when I first met this woman and she told me that, I believed her, because of course, why would you not believe her? You know, now I've known her for 5 years, and I've never not seen her with a drink in her hand, ever. So I don't know if she but we do that to ourselves. And when I was remembering, I was like, was I like that? Did I have any awareness? And I was like, no, you know what? I think I said, I'm just not a big drinker. I literally said that not only to myself all the time, but also to everybody else. And I was a very big drinker, but it was like, but I'm not as big as that colleague or that coworker, or I'm not doing this, or, you know, there's it's just crazy how we literally confuse ourselves. I wasn't saying it to lie. I was, and she wasn't either. She's saying it because she believes she barely ever drinks. And I'm like, wow, I've seen you dozens of times in the last few months, and you've never not been drinking. So I don't know what that means exactly. And a few times you were super drunk. Like, so I don't know what barely ever, but we just do it, and we tell ourselves these stories, and then we just believe it. So it becomes super hard to question it.
I always did that. I compared myself to other people. I'm like, I can quit at any time. I would do the, dry January. I think I mentioned that. I did it last year. So 2019, in January, and I was like, oh, this is cool. There's a trend of like not drinking. I can reset and let my liver get back to normal, and then go back to drinking again in February. And but it was crazy because the entire time, I was thinking about when's that next drink gonna come. It's like, oh man, I can't wait until January 31st. I didn't make it to January 31st because my vacation was starting before then, and I didn't want to go into vacation not having my liver ready for what was going to ensue that weekend. So, but yeah, I always tell myself, like, I don't drink as much as this person, and I can always quit whenever I want to, and it's really not that much. But if you, and it's the same thing with food, like people, when they say that, I don't eat so much junk food, but if you actually start recording what you eat with an app or something like that, you'd be surprised at how much, junk you really put in your body. So it's the same thing with alcohol. If you actually sat down and recorded every drink you took that day, you'd look back and by all standards, you would say, yeah, I was binge drinking almost any time that I drank, by the normal health standards, right? Because you're having 6 or more beers in that short period of time, or 3 or 4 vodka sodas, which are very easy to put down in a couple hours or an hour even, these events. But you don't think about that unless you actually write it down and go back and look at it and say, oh man, I was drinking way too much.
Yeah, there was a exercise somebody did where they took just the normal, the big kind of nice wine glasses that we all, were using or whatever. And they took a whole bottle of wine, and you can pour an entire bottle of wine in most of those wine glasses.
I've seen it.
It's crazy. And
I've seen it.
Well, it's just
I've
one
seen
glass
that
of wine.
One. It is. It's one glass. Like, is that 4 ounces? Is that a 6-ounce glass? Is it 12 ounces? Like, I had all kind of ways to rationalize if it was a 20-ounce beer. Well, I mean, that's one beer. It just happens to be 20 ounces versus 12. So does it really count the same? Well, yeah, you just drink almost 2 beers. So yeah, we do that mentally, I think, to not feel bad about the fact that we're drinking, because it was always in the back of my mind that I'm like drinking too much and that I should either cut back or stop. And so that's just part of the mental part of it, just saying, hey, I'm not drinking as much. It's not as much of a problem as I think it is. So I think it's normal that everybody goes through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what happened next?
So I would say this past 2 years, really, I've just, I've been thinking about it more. Started kind of with the dry January last year. And then just kind of the course of the last 2 years, it's been a good run at the current company that I'm at, but it's been a pretty stressful one. I would say, especially this year, it's been I'd say this year, last year in 2019, it was pretty rough. So I found that my drinking was just getting, it was extremely habitual. End of the day, it's 4 o'clock. I start getting that itch that's like, oh man, I'd love to have a cocktail or just a glass of wine or have some beers. So it went from being like hey, we're just going to do this on the weekends, or only whenever we go to a friend's house, or only whenever we do, vacations, whatever we were saying to, that's the only time we were going to drink. It never really ended up being that. And so what happened to being, let's just drink on the weekends, was like, well, it's Tuesday. So like, let's drink on Tuesday now. And, oh, we're going out. So it's, I know it's only Thursday and we say we weren't going to drink, but we would have that drink. And so I just found myself pretty much, I would say almost every day, whether it was one drink or it was a few drinks. I mean, there was always alcohol pretty much daily at that point. End of the day, I'm going to have this cocktail and I'm going to take the edge off. And really, I was just numbing the fact that I was unhappy and, having stress at work. Instead of dealing with that, I was just pouring alcohol into my system to really numb it. And it did work. The numbing works for a little bit. But then the pain of the next morning as I got older just became, more and more in my mind. Like I'm doing this to my body. I'm waking up with headaches. I can't sleep at night. I'm tossing and turning. Like, why am I doing this? And so I started, I've always been I would say a bit of a fitness nut. I don't go crazy, but I like to work out. I really enjoy it and try to stay in shape. And I was doing all these things with my diet and exercise and, all these regimens. But the one thing that didn't change was the fact that I was still drinking quite a bit. So I felt good physically. I was working out and doing all these things, but then I would just go pour all this alcohol into my system, and I'd have really poor sleep and wake up and just really feeling bad about myself, saying, well, why do I keep doing this? Why am I punishing myself with these headaches and aches and pains and, upset stomach and everything else that comes along with it? And then just the shame of like, doing it. The fact that I would say I could control it, but I really wasn't controlling it. All that sort of started bubbling up, I would say, summertime, and then leading into the kind of the holiday season, which is really I probably picked the worst time that you possibly could to decide that I'm going to quit. And I did that in early, I guess mid-November is when I did it. I think you called it like spontaneous sobriety or something,
Yep.
something along those lines. And I just woke up one day and said, we had an event. We went out with some friends for this guy's 40th birthday party. And I came home that next morning. I had a hangover. I was like, I'm done. Like, I've got to stop. I'm going to quit. Told my wife, like, I'm done. And at that time, mentally, I was saying I'm done for a certain period of time. I didn't say I'm just done, period. Like, I just got to quit for a while. And then I started researching and looking at other people that have done this, because I was like, hey, I can't be the only person that's gone through this. I can't see ever doing like an AA meeting or something. And I'm not saying that those are bad. They weren't for me, because I wasn't going to go sit in a room and talk about it and admit that I had some problem that I couldn't overcome, because I felt like I could overcome it. So I just said, look, I'm done. And that's when I stopped. But again, my point was I was looking for research on like what other people are doing. So I found another book before I read yours that was very much in the same vein of like, hey, getting sober. Why do we do this to ourselves? And how do you sort of mentally overcome the desire for the alcohol? Because it becomes chemical at that point where you've got that desire. And I read some books on desire and really just trying to gain knowledge about why do we make these choices that we make, so that I could mentally change my attitude towards it, which is what you have to do with anything. It's just like dieting. If you just I'm just going to change my food, it's not going to work. You have to change your attitude and your mind, and really shift your thinking to be able to do it. And so that's why I started reading these books, and that's why I came across yours. And as I mentioned in my note to you, I was reading it and I kept running into my wife, and I was like, man, this is me. This is my life. This is exactly what I've been through. These are things that I've been struggling with. So it sort of validated my decision, and then gave me a lot of just, I guess, encouragement and resources to look at of, how do I continue on this journey, right? Without, falling back into the trap that I was in before.
That's so awesome. That's so great. And I did the same thing in terms of right before the holidays. It was really like right before the holidays. It was just like, well,
yeah,
it's time. I guess that was silly in hindsight, but it wasn't. It was the right thing for me. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it showed me that if I can do it then, like I can do it. I mean, then going out to a party or things that just seemed like very, like I was scared to go do without having alcohol. Now it's not a big deal. Like,
Right.
2.5, 3 months later, it's sort of like, okay, I'm not even thinking when I go to that event, how am I going to not have a drink? Like, that's not even part of my thought process now. But that first month, I mean, you had Thanksgiving. So obviously there's wine and other things like that going on. You have, then you have all these bowl games, which I'm a big football fan. So I love watching football and sitting on the couch having a beer. And then you got Christmas, and you're, out for the holidays on vacation and traveling. So like, it's a tough thing to do, to not actually drink. But again, to the point of the book is like, when you mentally, you change your mindset and look at alcohol for what it really is. It's not the part that was making me have the fun. It felt like it was, but it had so much negative on the back end, right? The pain of the hangovers and all that just started getting much worse. And so I had to realize that I could do that without, having a drink. And really the first big sober first that I would say I had was a Christmas party that we go to every year. A lot of our close friends, it's all adults. So we have a good time. We bring gag gifts, and everybody has a lot of fun with, what crazy gifts somebody's going to bring. So there's plenty of drinking. And I talked to another friend of mine who was going through the same thing. He made the decision, ironically, right around the same time as me. We just sort of landed at the same time and told each other, and we're like, oh my God, I didn't know you were doing that too. And he gave me some ideas. I'm like, well, how do you go, what should I do? Because I didn't want to answer all those questions, at that party. And, well, why aren't you drinking? And what's going on? Are you sick? Is there something wrong? Did you, or did you fall off the wagon? Like, what's the problem here? So I just showed up with my own, Yeti cup, if you're down here in Texas, and we love our Yeti cups. And I had club soda in there with some limes, and basically had that the entire night. And I would just restock it and didn't get a single question about it. So it was actually pretty easy, and I had a good time. And, from that point on, I realized like I can do this. I can actually go out to an event that has a lot of alcohol and be totally fine, have conversations, and still enjoy myself without having the hangover the next morning.
That's so awesome. And so do you have any special plans for your sales meeting in Vegas?
No, I think, at this point, a lot of the people that are closer to me know that I've, completely stopped drinking. The number one question you get is when are you going to start drinking again? That's almost the default, question is like, well, no, I'm not. I don't have any plans to drink again. I'm not going to say I'll never have a drink, because I don't want to, beat myself up too bad if I had a sip of champagne or something at some event, but I don't have a desire for it. So, we'll go out and they'll have, club sodas and limes, which is kind of my go-to. And, I'll maybe throw some ginger beer in there with it, because I like the taste of the ginger beer. But yeah, I'm just going to hang out, have fun. I definitely will get a lot better sleep. I won't be waking up the next morning, dragging myself into sessions, feeling horrible. So I'll probably be way more attentive and probably learn a little bit more, because I won't be hungover. But yeah, I'm actually going up a couple of days early to go see some shows with my wife. So we'll have some fun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I did. Our journeys are very similar. I did Vegas very soon as well, within the first 6 months. And I actually had a friend call me up, and she was like, she had been sober through AA, and she's like, okay, call me anytime. Let me know the support you need. Let me know all that stuff. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I know this is going to be intense. And I was like, really? I didn't plan on that, but yeah, I'll let you know. And I think it's so true. Once your mindset is kind of shifted and you're really looking at it, it's like, yeah, why would I do that? I'm looking forward to everything that's going to happen, like the shows and the,
yeah.
I remember not feeling hungover at some of our breakfast buffets, just feeling like, yeah, no, this is awesome. I feel great. Nothing that
it is. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
That's very cool. It's very cool.
I think most people are still looking for, well, when is he going to pick up that next beer? And it's like, well, again, I just don't have the desire to do it. So it's, yeah, but Dry January was funny, because you did see a few people that traditionally I've noticed that they would drink a lot, and they did some Dry January. So I think, everybody sort of questions it, and I didn't go put it out there as like, hey, look at me, I'm not drinking. But, you'd be at an event and everybody else is ordering drinks, and you have to order something. And they're like, oh, you're not drinking? And so you just sort of, yeah, it's a choice I made. And that's what I said, the next question would always be, okay, well, when are you going to stop? And, what are you going to do when you go on vacation? You're going on these vacations. How are you going to do that? It's like, well, I'm do like every normal person does whenever they go and doesn't drink. I'm going to have some fun, and I'll be able to remember most of it, which is probably more than I can say for my other vacation.
Yep. So true. So good. So has there been, I know you're into fitness, but has there been anything else that you've really found kind of pivotal in your journey that has really been helpful, or has it just really been about the mindset shift?
Yeah, I'd say it's, the mindset shift was really the biggest thing for me. Like I said, I've always tried I'm going to go moderate, and I'm just going to drink a little bit. I'm going to cut back, but it never worked, right? It literally, it was too stressful, because I was always like, oh, can I have this drink tonight? And it's like, if you do, you feel really, really crappy about it, because you let yourself down, because you didn't have the willpower to withstand it. And so, again, I read up on a lot of different things about the mind and how it works. And, willpower can only get you so far, because you're just not, the body is not used to it. We're not gonna be able to do it. So you got to have more than just willpower to get through it. At the beginning, it's fine, saying no to that drink, or, me, the sugar, definitely, you mentioned it has, the sugar cravings have definitely heightened. So that's probably my next challenge, is how do I get that back off of my plate. But, I'd say that mindset was critical, because if I'd been thinking like, oh, I'm only going to do this until December 31st or December 24th, so I can drink on Christmas or whatever, I don't think I would have had the strength to do it. But by saying it's done, it's out of my life, I don't need it to be happy. I think that to me is what helped do it, because I'm not thinking, when's my next drink? It's just not part of the thought process anymore. so that was it. The fact that I was turning 40 and I have 3 kids and really want to be around for them for the long haul. And it's like, there's enough things out there trying to kill us on a daily basis. Why am I doing more to help, kill myself early? So the health part of it was really big for me. I was, nervous that I was self-inflicting all this, pain on myself that was going to ultimately lead to who knows, what. It could be cancer, it could be anything. You don't know. It's a roll of the dice, but why contribute more to it than the environment's already contributing on its own?
Yeah, that's so good. So true. So true. So if you were going to go back in time, Marc, and just talk to, I mean, it sounds, gosh, so similar to my journey of like, it just feeling so normal and typical until I was just like, what am I doing? Like, it wasn't really any humongous moment or point where I was like, no, I'm drinking differently than everybody else around me or anything like that. It was just more of a like, I just want more for my own life. And, but if you're going to go back and talk to yourself, especially the part of yourself that was like, had been told that your job wasn't going to be successful without it, or that it was so vital for social life, like what would you tell him about what life is like today?
Well, I mean, I would tell him that obviously all those things are not true, that it's definitely not required to be successful in any career, I guess, unless maybe you sell alcohol, but even then, I don't think it's required to be successful. So obviously the lies and what you're going to be fed is simply not true. And so, really what you're after is, enjoying those experiences, being able to remember them. Not drinking allows you to actually be more in the moment than when you are drinking, even though, your inhibitions are down when you are drinking, which is why most of us did it. You tend to enjoy it a lot more now, and conversations are better. I think you joked about the drunk friend that's telling you the same story for like the 3rd or 4th time. Like, I'd literally experienced that on one of the sober first that we went out for like a comedy show, and I kept getting the same story over again. So my point is like you're there and more present without the alcohol. So you tend to remember things and have a much more enjoyable time than when you are drinking. And, again, I think from just setting an example for my kids, like I'd look back and definitely know that I wasn't setting the best example with just, you don't know how much they pick up and all those things, but I can tell you now it's very much like trying to show them that you don't have to do those things to have a good time. And that what alcohol really is poison. And if you are going to do it, you want to be very, very careful with it. It's literally like playing with a loaded weapon at that point, because you don't know how it could go off at any moment, and you could have that where you get hooked, or you may be somebody who just doesn't. But I mean, it's definitely Russian roulette, I'd say, if you're going to start drinking.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. So intense, especially when you think of the kids in college and stuff like that. And just, it's so good to at least have some balanced messaging. I'm not sitting here going to preach like that, we need to go back to prohibition, because that obviously didn't work, but just some balance. Mm-hmm. I went to college not even knowing that, you could just drink too much and die. Like, just be done. Yep. Like, that happens a lot in colleges. And so that's so good. Bring that balance.
Yeah, I mean, I was never, I don't think, on the brink of death. I don't think so, but I've certainly had ER visits for dehydration, which obviously were from just, drinking way too much and not get enough fluids. So, we came up with very crafty ways to try to combat just the dehydration. So instead of curbing the drinking, we would just take a bunch of electrolytes and chug those before we'd go out. So our pregame was actually, drinking a bottle of electrolytes so that you could drink more. And so it's like, yeah, I knew that you could die from it, but I was doing all the things to try to hydrate my body so that I could actually drink more and wake up the next day, which is just crazy, obviously, now that I look back on it. So yeah, that would be the message. I mean, it's hard to say, don't ever do it, don't ever try it, because I think having those experiences was just part of growing up and finding out who you are. So people are going to do those things. So prohibition, I'm with you. I'm not a fan of it. I think it would make things probably worse. But yeah, it's I'd say it's a lot more enjoyable now, and I enjoy my kids more, just the experiences more. The fact that I'm able to to continue working out and doing those things without having the headache, pounding headache in the morning and those sorts of things has been a big plus for me.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that it's powerful. I mean, so many people can relate, and the more we talk about it, I think the better. So I just really appreciate that. It's awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yep. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And thanks for writing the book.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm so glad it helped. It's awesome. Cool. Well, have a great day, Marc. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Let me ask you a question. What is better than change? Lasting change, of course. And if you've had trouble making change stick, either with alcohol or in any other area of your life, you are in for a treat. I created the 100 Days of Lasting Change to ensure that we don't just change for a moment, but we truly transform for a lifetime. And this program is so close to my heart. Thousands of people have been through it and their results are incredible. But don't take my word for it. Check it out at thisnakedmind.com/100 days. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.